No, just say, because a lot of people who are entrepreneurs come in, they think they can just kind of waltz in and to the political system, and it doesn't work that way. You really have to become part of the ecosystem.
Josh Becker, thank you for joining me on 20 Minute Leaders. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time to do this. I know you just got back from a long trip, so I really appreciate it. And I know how busy you are. Brief background, and then I'm going to ask so many questions because I know so little about the things that you do, the scope of the things that you do, but they're so fascinating. So Stanford Business School, but also a law degree from Stanford, always thinking about, public interest entrepreneurship. What does that even mean? I can sense by the name, but I don't really know. The Full Circle Fund, helping nonprofits. I think you've deployed over 100,000 hours of help through that. Incredible. And you're running for state senate this year, which I'm excited to learn about what that transformation is like and what it means to innovate within government. Okay, let's take a break now. Josh, tell me who you are, please.
Well, thanks. Yeah, this is really fun. I really appreciate you having me. Yeah, and thinking about it, I mean, there are themes that run through all of that. And for me, it really is innovation. I love innovation in any respect. So whether in the private sector, in the nonprofit sector, or now in the government sector. And, for me, that's really been a theme. I actually started out more on a public policy basis. I mean, out of undergrad, I was really focused on environmental activism, went to DC, worked in policy, worked in some campaigns. And it was almost a fluke, really, that I ended up in business school. But in between the time I applied and I came out, I got involved with a guy named Jack Hittery starting an early internet company called EarthWeb. And this was 1994, early days of the web, bringing a physical computer over to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, showing them the web, saying, hey, we'll build a website for you. And I got really involved. And by the time I came out to Stanford, in 1995, it's like, wow, this is really a great place to be. And so I got really into innovation in the private sector in the early internet days, and ultimately in clean tech. And I became to see a way to really meld my common interests in the public good with innovation. And I did it both in what we call impact investing. And this was at the really early days. We started to fund in the impact investing space, which actually is now growing. And we're focusing on businesses that had a real social impact. So clean energy was one of them.
Wow.
And
But that's pretty, I go to quite a few of the classes at the business school, and a lot of my friends are at the Stanford Business School. It's pretty rare that somebody comes in there and goes out of there with the sense of responsibility of, devoting most of their time to doing social good. Right now, there is a trend, and a lot of people are saying, yes, I want my business to do social good, but you're saying it's about the social good. It's not about necessarily just the business. The social good is the motivation. It's not just a by. It's not just a by consequence. Right?
Yeah, and personally, I see a lot of young students right now that you are really interested, as you say, in that intersection. But yeah, we were kind of on the early edge of that. And in fact, we had our own conference we created called the Zero Trade-Off Investment Conference. So we're looking at things that can actually create a great financial return and a great social return.
Right.
But clean energy was one of those, and we got involved in a company called O-Power that was really about using social psychology to get people to reduce their energy use, and that ended up being a huge success. And again, show me what's possible. Inner city, we've had a focus on inner city and ethnic entrepreneurs. So still on the board of a company that's now called You Are Welcome. You Are Welcome with a U and a R, and it's kind of like a USAA for immigrants. And then we had an inner city, something called The Villa, which was an inner city shoe store. Really, a guy who took his parents' sneaker store and started opening up in the inner city and building life, work skills and life skills, and into a number of those things. Then Full Circle Fund, I realized so many of my friends from business school and law school that did have a really deep interest in doing good in the world, but they were busy. Everyone's, you're busy with your lives, your work, your kids. And so we said, let's pool together our time and our money. And that was Full Circle Fund. We started that actually, this is almost exactly 20 years ago. This is our 20th anniversary year.
Wow.
And it's just that way I found, like you see some books behind me. I find when I'm part of a book club, I read more books. So when I'm part of something like Full Circle, I end up giving more because you build a social community around giving.
And it's also it's available. So I mean, right now, right, a lot of this idea of you want to get something done. I love behavioral economics when you talk about the social psychology of
Yeah,
reducing energy. So and Dan Ariely is a big mentor of mine, and one of the things that I was always
right.
inspired by him was he says. Listen, we're irrational people. We can't really, it's very hard to change ourselves, but if we can change our environment to fit what we want to achieve, like joining a book club and then you're systematically forced to read a book, or if you want, or if you're joining the Full Circle Fund and now you have the accessibility to go and help others. I think that's marvelous. Josh, tell me a little bit about this, innovation in government, because I want to make sure we leave enough time for this, because I think it's fascinating. You're running for Senate. How do you do this transition from entrepreneur investor to government? What motivates you to do that?
Sure. And I probably have Dan Ariely's book right behind me.
Wonderful.
But yeah, I think, you kind of look and see where you can have the biggest impact. And when I started really focusing on the state of California, realizing, we have a $200 billion budget, if it were our own country, it would be the fifth or sixth largest economy in the world. And there's really not that many state senators, just 40 state senators. And probably 5 to 10 of those 40 who are really probably the most influential. And so I began to see that as an opportunity for change. Essentially, this is the board of directors for the state of California, the state senate and the state house. And the more I started focusing on that, I just said, wow, well, this is a real opportunity. And you listen, I'm sure, and I talk to friends up there now, and it is still, you 40 in the Senate, 80 in the House, so it's still 120 people. It's still, I'm sure it's going to be bureaucratic at times, but when you look at the opportunity for leverage, I think it's tremendous. And whether it's meeting our clean energy goals, where California, I think, is the hope certainly for the U.S. and one of the big hopes for the world. And by the way, I'm really excited about collaboration, as I've done in my past life, about collaborating with Israel and the amazing technology around water,
Totally.
and around solar, around storage, that's coming out of Israel. Really looking forward to collaborating there. So, whether it was clean energy, whether it was focusing on social justice and criminal justice reform, that the California was this huge leverage point, and I got really excited about that. And that's what I'm going up there to do.
That's incredible. So, and is this like a spontaneous, gut feeling that you have to do this, or is this something that you feel like you've worked towards for years? Which of these two?
It's a little bit of both, to be honest. I mean, like I said, I started out in DC, before I came out to Stanford and business school, law school, I was already focused on policy. So it's not, like a brand new, like I woke up one day and decided I had to do it. So I'd say it was more of an evolution, in terms of really, like, I never thought I would personally run. That's something I never thought for sure would ever happen. So, but I was always very interested in policy, maybe more so than other kids or other, young adults. So I'd say it's a bit of an evolution.
Right, and I mean, you're gonna come there. I don't know how many people that are senators have a background, this entrepreneurial and innovative background that you have. Do you think that's gonna be a challenge, or is that going to be, a fun experience, being the sort of the odd one out?
I think it'll be a little bit of I think it'll be a little bit of both. I'm sure it'll be some eye-opening situations.
I'm
So I think it'll
sure.
be a little bit of both. But I am really excited about it. I mean, hopefully people will turn to me on certain issues and look at me that I've got some degree of expertise to bring. But
Right.
at the same time, I need to be humble as well and realize there's a lot I have to learn about the state of California. I'm already starting now, but it's such a massive state with whether it's the agricultural economy, the Hollywood economy, the tech economy. There's just so much to learn. Like I said, I just got back on this trip, all the way down the Eastern Sierras, all the way to Death Valley. it's a really incredibly diverse state. So I've got a lot to learn as
I
well.
think it's unbelievable. But the perception of young entrepreneurs like myself, when we think of, government, senator, congressman, we look back at these funny videos with Zuckerberg sitting in front of Congress and they're asking him, well, how do ads work? Are you, tracking people and are you showing them stuff that they should buy? And in our perception, somebody who sits in the government is not necessarily the most tech savvy and not necessarily the best representative of where innovation takes it. You're bringing a different perspective to this. Do you? So are you? How do you see sort of this mishmash of both bureaucracy and innovation and tech and crises that are happening? I mean, you really have to balance everything.
Yeah, I think when you look great change in government, and I've also done that in law, by the way. I started a whole company, spent 10 years in legal analytics. We brought data and analytics to the law, which was a law, so that was
What
a
does that
long
mean?
game. And
Bringing data
I
and
think,
analytics to the law.
yeah, in politics, sometimes you got to play the long game too. And, thinking driving across the state, I've been on the board of UC Merced for 15 years. That was a government decision said, hey, we need to start a new UC campus in the Central Valley. And, first it was 100 students, and now it'll be 10,000 students. And
Wow,
we just had, and my friend Jack's now at Google X, so we had a great call now that, Google is getting serious about diversifying the STEM pipeline. And we've got all these great diverse, engineering students coming out of UC
wonderful.
Merced. And so, sometimes you got, but it took a long, it didn't happen overnight, but it was, people were very forward thinking to say, hey, great, we need a new UC. Let's put it in the Central Valley. Let's encourage, college attendance. And so sometimes you got to play the long game in government.
No, no, and Jack is actually a very good friend of my father's, and he's every time I meet him, my mind is just blown. It's the work they're doing there on quantum computing is just phenomenal. But so bringing analytics and data to legal, what does that mean? What did you try to do there?
Sure. Basically, in a nutshell, we realized it started really around patent, some area that a lot of entrepreneurs get very frustrated with the
Of
patent
course,
system, and we realized there's no data. There's no data about when you get hit with a patent lawsuit. Who is this person suing me? What's their pattern of behavior? Are they looking for a quick buck, or is this a serious company that
right.
takes things all the way and they've got a serious claim here? There was no data about judges. Who's this judge I'm in front of? What is their pattern? What is her pattern of behavior? Um, and so we realized it's endemic in law. There's just no data. And so we said that data is actually out there. It's just buried in millions of lawsuits. So we said, hey, we can, extract out these millions of data points from millions of cases. Then we could tell you if you're in front of a certain judge, we can say, hey, in the last 1,000 cases of this type in front of this judge, here's the lawyers that have the most experience.
Wow.
Here's who won the most motions. Here's a strategy you might think about pursuing, and here's how this judge has ruled in these kinds of
I mean, I
cases.
think I
So
kind of blindly assume that this is how a lot of these law firms work today. That when they're advising on a case, they're able to look back at thousands of other similar cases because history repeats itself constantly, and be able to give those insights. But you're saying that that's not really the case.
well, the thing is, I mean, I know a lot of brilliant lawyers, but you can't keep 3,000 cases in your head. I mean, it's been the ultimate anecdata business, right? It's like, oh yeah, I had this case in front of this judge, and I
Interesting.
remember this, and you know, um, and
I
really, it's
love that
all
anecdata. I've never heard that
yeah.
before. I'm gonna start using
Plural
that.
anecdotes is anecdata. And that's really what it's been. It's all reputation based too. Oh, this law firm's got a great reputation. Oh, I need a great lawyer. Oh, you got to talk to, Lisa. But really, there's just no data behind it. I mean, it's like VC too, frankly. You always put your wins. If you go to any VC website, they're going to say, oh, look at all our great exits. They don't say, oh, here's the other 100 companies we invested in that didn't make it,
A
right?
hundred
They
percent.
just, I mean, now, with Crunchbase, I mean, now people have gotten a little more data there, but that was also a data void.
Interesting. So you start, and so when was this that you started this firm?
So this is actually it was a public interest project at Stanford Law, and what was amazing, you probably know Andrew Ng,
Of course.
from Google Day. So Andrew, when he was still full time at Stanford, and then Chris Manning, who runs natural language processing,
Yeah.
um, the founders of this public interest project went to Andrew and Chris and said, "Will you help us?" And they first said no because they're very busy, and then ultimately they said, "Hey, this is good for the country," and they got involved and they got excited about, and especially
Wow.
Chris, of natural language processing. So I was very fortunate. This was way before I was involved. This was back in 2006, 2007, and then it spun off as a public interest project in late 2010. They brought me in 2011 to grow it. So, but it took, it still took 9 years. Now it's part of LexisNexis and it's growing. We just passed 3 million cases that are now in the system. We just added a whole new area of law. We're starting to add states now because so much what happens at the state level, and that's even much, much harder
Of
place to
course.
even get the raw materials because most states don't even have electronic court records. So anyway,
Wow.
it's been the long game, the long journey, but it's really transforming the way law is practiced.
Wow. So you worked on projects with Jack Hiddery. This project had involvement with Andrew and Chris. I mean, these are just the top of the top of the top of the world thinkers. So I think that's incredible. What are you most excited about moving forward? And I actually right before that, the election. How does it even work? What do you have to do? Because a lot of the times when people in tech, they're thinking of the politicians and the elections. It seems like, oh yeah, he has to go do that. He has to go and say and talk these. He has to go talk. He can't just do. Talk to me a little bit about this election process.
Sure. One thing I'll just say, because a lot of people who are entrepreneurs come in, they think they can just kind of waltz in and to the political system, and it doesn't work that way. You really have to become part of the ecosystem. You have to really get to know um, all the players. And Woody Allen used to say, when 98% of life is just showing up, you really have to show up at all the local Democratic clubs and all the local meetings and really get to know people. You
Right.
cannot just waltz in and say, "Hey, I'm going to run for this thing." It's a very different. The world's, even here in Silicon Valley, are just not connected. People, you know, um, in fact, it can also be a negative in some ways. So I really put in a many years of hard work and fun work, but hard work at the local level and just getting to know people and spent 18 months before the primary, even just on
Wow.
this race alone. So because we have 24 cities in my district, and it spans all of Silicon Valley from South San Francisco down to Sunnyvale. And each one has city council members, each has school board members. There's county officials, and they're doing hard work for many years, and you got to understand that. So you really have to put in the time, and I'm proud that I did that. Finished first in the primary. We have in California a great system, a top two system. So basically, the top
Right.
two vote getters advance, and what that means is usually you actually have two Democrats in this area, so people then get to choose between a flavor of Democrat.
Right.
Or in Orange County, you might have two Republicans. Actually, in my race, I did very well, and there was a lot of other Democrats. So it ended up being me and a Republican that will be facing off in November. So we had the top
For
two
the
primary, and
whole
now
state.
what'd you say?
That's gonna be for the whole state.
No, again, no. This is our district. So we have each state senate district is about 1 million people. So our district is from basically everything from the border of San Francisco down to Sunnyvale.
Okay.
So I get
Okay.
the Israeli kibbutz in Sunnyvale as part of my
100%.
district.
I thought it was. I had a talk with the mayor of Sunnyvale back then, Larry. Back in what was it? I think 2 3 months ago, and then halfway through the talk, he mentioned that he's also a program manager at a startup, at a battery startup, and I thought it was just it was hilarious that I'm talking to a mayor of a city. In Israel, you never have that. So I think it was just phenomenal. And what are you most excited about? The next few years, potentially, serving as a senator.
Yeah, very excited about the opportunity to make change in areas that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Clean energy, got to lead the world. Criminal justice reform, um, education. Higher education. I mean, we need 3 more UC Merceds in this state. More access for kids. Those are just a few of the areas, but I'm really excited about the opportunity. To lead in all those, build a world class transportation system here, especially in the Bay Area. I just got off a call on that. So those are some things I'm really passionate about.
And now looking at this crisis that we're facing globally, and you're at the intersection of both innovation and government, so you're getting the flavor of both. In your take, where are we headed with this, and what are the things to be either optimistic about or pessimistic about?
I think there's reason to be optimistic, and we've seen even through this pandemic, both how communities have rallied. I mean, certainly in the U.S. we have some divisiveness and polarization right now that we need to get through. Um, but you've also seen there's a lot of great stories about neighbors helping neighbors and innovation, whether people how they're running their small businesses differently, how cities are opening up streets for restaurants, or how I just got emailed today. I looked at a guy, hey, I'm leaving Samsung to lead this COVID related company. And it was like,
Wow.
wow, really cool. So, there's just a lot of
Amazing.
people doing really cool work, and it's going to, and biotech is also an area I spend a lot of time on now, especially in oncology. And to see we will have a vaccine and faster than we've ever had one before. And it's not overnight as these things are, but we're getting there, and the innovation piece is critical.
100%. Josh, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing this right after after you're back from your trip. Before we leave, I have to ask you for three words that best describe you.
Uh, thank you. I would say innovative, um, thoughtful, and passionate.
Innovative, thoughtful, passionate. And I think, one of the things that I'm most is inspired by, and I'm taking a lesson for myself, is this persistence and consistency with putting the public interest first. I think it shines on all the different endeavors over the past decades. And the fact that you're able to do these endeavors with, the greatest thought leaders in the world, seriously, all the people that we've talked about, they're really just incredible. And I'm very, very excited that, people are now entering the politics space and government with the insight and the experience of what it takes to bring innovation. And thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you up there.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye bye.